Sometimes, the walls of an apartment hold secrets too dark to be revealed. Whispers that echo in the dead of night, shadows that move when no one is looking, and a chill that creeps up your spine, leaving you questioning what is real and what is not. In a place where the living and the dead coexist, one misstep could lead you into a nightmare you may never escape from. Tonight, I will take you into the heart of that nightmare, where every corner hides a terror waiting to be uncovered. I should have known that the cheap price of the apartment came with a hidden cost. When I first stepped into apartment 46, I felt a strange chill in the air. The walls seemed to hum with a faint vibration, and the dim lighting cast long, eerie shadows. But the real unease began when I noticed the large mirror in the bedroom. It was an antique, with an ornate, dark wood frame, and it stood almost as tall as the ceiling. At first, I thought it was a beautiful, albeit unusual, addition to the room, but soon, it became clear that this mirror was not just a piece of decoration. That night, as I was unpacking, I caught a glimpse of something in the mirror. It wasn't my reflection, at least not entirely. It was a woman's face, staring back at me with hollow, haunting eyes. I blinked, and she was gone, leaving only my reflection behind. My heart pounded, and I tried to convince myself it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. As the days passed, the feeling of being watched grew stronger. I would often catch movement out of the corner of my eye, only to find nothing there. The mirror, however, became the focus of my unease. Each time I looked into it, I felt as if the woman's face was on the verge of reappearing. The shadows in the room seemed to cling to it, as if drawn by some dark force within the glass. One night, unable to sleep, I decided to cover the mirror with a sheet, hoping to block out whatever was haunting me. But even with the mirror covered, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end, and I began to hear faint whispers, indistinct, yet unmistakably coming from the direction of the mirror. The whispers grew louder with each passing night. I would lie in bed, my heart racing, as the soft, eerie murmurs filled the room. Sometimes, I could almost make out words, but they always slipped away before I could fully understand them. The mirror, now covered by the sheet, seemed to pulse with a sinister energy. I knew I couldn't stay in that bedroom any longer. I decided to move to the living room, bringing my blankets and pillows with me. But even there, the whispers followed. They echoed through the walls, growing more insistent, more demanding. It felt as if the entire apartment was alive, trying to communicate something to me, something terrible. In a desperate attempt to find peace, I started sleeping with the lights on, hoping the brightness would chase away whatever was lurking in the shadows. But it didn't help. The whispers continued, and now they were accompanied by strange, fleeting shadows that darted across the walls. I began to dread the night, knowing that as soon as darkness fell, the terror would begin anew. One night, as I was lying on the couch, trying to fall asleep, I heard a soft, shuffling sound coming from the hallway. My blood ran cold, and I held my breath, straining to listen. The sound grew closer, as if someone or something was slowly making its way toward the living room. I squeezed my eyes shut, hoping it would go away, but the noise continued. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped, and I felt a cold breath on my face. My eyes flew open, And there, standing at the foot of the couch, was the woman from the mirror. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow, and her mouth twisted into a silent scream. I wanted to scream myself, but no sound came out. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move, unable to look away. The woman's gaze bored into me, and I could feel her anger, her sorrow, her desperation. She was trapped, just like I was, and she was trying to reach out to me, to pull me into her world. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and she was gone. I was left alone in the living room, trembling and drenched in cold sweat. I knew then that the mirror was more than just a cursed object. It was a gateway, a portal to something dark and malevolent. I couldn't sleep after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, twisted in anguish, her hollow eyes staring into my soul. The apartment became a prison, and I began to feel like I was losing my mind. The whispers grew louder, more persistent, and the shadows danced on the walls with a life of their own. I tried to leave the apartment, but every time I reached the door, I was overwhelmed by a sense of dread so powerful that I couldn't bring myself to open it. It was as if the apartment didn't want me to leave, as if it was holding me hostage. My phone no longer worked, and the few calls I managed to make were met with nothing but static. Days blended into nights, and time lost all meaning. I stopped eating, stopped caring for myself. My only focus was the mirror and the horrors it held. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. The woman's face haunted me, her silent scream echoing in my mind. In a moment of clarity, I decided to confront the mirror. If I could find a way to break whatever curse was tied to it, maybe I could free both of us. But as I approached the mirror, I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. The closer I got, the more intense the feeling became, until I was forced to stop, unable to move any further. I fell to my knees, clutching my stomach, as the room spun around me. The whispers grew deafening, and the shadows swirled around me like a dark fog. I knew I was on the verge of losing myself completely, but I couldn't give up. I had to find a way to break the mirror's hold on me. As I lay on the floor, gasping for breath, I noticed something strange about the wall behind the mirror. The wallpaper was peeling slightly at the edges, revealing a small gap. With trembling hands, I reached out and began to peel away the wallpaper, uncovering a hidden door. The door was small and nondescript, almost as if it were trying to blend into the wall. But I knew it was significant. My heart pounded as I slowly opened the door, revealing a dark, narrow passage leading into the unknown. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen and cautiously entered the passage. The air inside was stale and musty, as if it hadn't been disturbed in years. The passage led to a small, hidden room filled with old, dusty furniture and stacks of yellowing papers. In the center of the room was a large, antique trunk. I approached it with a sense of dread, knowing that whatever was inside could hold the key to the horrors I had been experiencing. With a deep breath, I opened the trunk. Inside, I found a collection of old photographs, letters, and a diary. The photographs were faded and sepia-toned, depicting a young woman who looked eerily similar to the one in the mirror. The letters were love letters, written in a delicate, flowing script. And the diary belonged to the woman in the photographs. As I read through the diary, I learned that the woman had lived in the apartment many years ago. She had been deeply in love with a man who had died tragically in an accident. Heartbroken, she had tried to contact him through a series of dark rituals, using the mirror as a conduit to the other side. But something had gone horribly wrong, and instead of bringing her lover back, she had unleashed a malevolent force that had consumed her. The diary detailed the steps of the ritual she had performed, and I realized with a sinking feeling that I was now caught in the same trap. The mirror was the key to her anguish, the source of the dark energy that had taken over the apartment. If I didn't find a way to reverse the ritual, I would end up just like her, trapped in the mirror, my soul lost to the darkness. The instructions in the diary were vague and cryptic, but I knew I had no choice but to try. I gathered the items she had used: a candle, a piece of broken glass, and a lock of her hair, which I found in a small box hidden in the trunk. I set everything up in front of the mirror, following the instructions as best I could. As I began the ritual, the air in the room grew thick and oppressive. The candle flickered, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. I recited the incantation from the diary, my voice trembling with fear. At first, nothing happened, but then the mirror began to glow with a soft, otherworldly light. I watched in horror as the woman's face appeared once again in the mirror, her expression twisted with pain and anger. She reached out toward me, her hand pressing against the glass as if trying to break free. The mirror began to vibrate, and the air around me grew colder. I continued the ritual, chanting the incantation louder and louder, desperate to complete it before the woman could escape. The room shook violently, and the shadows on the walls seemed to come to life, writhing and twisting like living creatures. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if something were trying to pull me into the mirror. With a final shout, I completed the ritual. The mirror shattered with a deafening crash, sending shards of glass flying across the room. The woman's face disappeared, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted instantly. I collapsed to the floor, exhausted and shaken, but relieved that it was finally over. The next morning, I woke up on the floor of the hidden room, surrounded by broken glass. The mirror was completely destroyed, and the dark energy that had permeated the apartment was gone. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive feeling of being watched had vanished. I spent the day cleaning up the mess, sweeping up the glass and packing away the diary and other items from the trunk. I wasn't sure what to do with them, but I knew I couldn't keep them in the apartment. They were too dangerous, too filled with the remnants of the dark ritual that had nearly destroyed me. As I finished cleaning, I found a small, silver key hidden among the debris. It was old and tarnished, and I had no idea what it was for. But I felt a strange connection to it, as if it were the final piece of the puzzle. I slipped it into my pocket, deciding to hold on to it for now. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly. The nightmares were gone, and the whispers no longer filled my ears. The apartment felt like a different place, almost as if the darkness that had haunted it had never existed. But deep down, I knew that the events of the past few weeks would stay with me forever. The woman's face, her haunting eyes, and the terror I had felt were burned into my memory. I had survived, but I would never be the same. The apartment had now become a trap, and I had no idea how to escape. Every time I tried to leave, the front door wouldn't budge, as if some invisible force was holding me here. My phone was also useless, no signal as soon as I tried to call for help. The noises became more frequent, not just from the hallway but from within my apartment itself. Knocks on the walls, the creak of doors, and footsteps echoing from the floor above, they all sounded so clear, so real. I began to see shadows moving at the corner of my eye, but when I turned, there was nothing. That night, I decided to try sleeping in the living room, hoping to avoid the mirror in my bedroom. But the voice returned. This time, it was closer, as if whispering right in my ear. I felt its breath on the back of my neck, sending chills down my spine. I quickly turned around, but once again, there was nothing. However, when I looked towards the window, I saw something that nearly made me faint. Outside, beyond the slightly parted curtains, was the woman's face, the same face I had seen in the mirror. But this time, she wasn't just staring at me. Her mouth was wide open, as if she were screaming, but no sound came out. Only the darkness that seemed to swallow her whole. I shut the curtains hastily, trying to push the image out of my mind. But the fear lingered, festering in every corner of the room. I began to feel her presence everywhere, behind every door, behind every window. She was watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. The next day, I decided to visit the apartment management office, hoping to uncover more about the building's history. But when I mentioned my apartment number, their expressions changed immediately. They exchanged glances, as if hiding something. Reluctantly, one of them admitted that previous tenants had reported strange occurrences. They always heard noises at night, saw shadows moving, and some even claimed to see something, one of the staff said, his voice trembling. I pressed them for more information, but they refused to elaborate. The only advice they offered was that I move out of the apartment as soon as possible. It's better to leave before it's too late, they said, but I knew it was already too late. That night, I returned to the apartment with a growing sense of dread. As I entered, something felt different. The temperature had dropped drastically, and the air felt heavy. On the living room table, there was a note that I hadn't left there. With trembling hands, I opened it. "Don't go back to the bedroom," it read, written in a scrawl as if someone in desperation had written it. I felt my breath catch, as though the walls of the apartment were closing in on me, trapping me inside. But despite the fear, I knew I couldn't keep hiding. I had to face this terror, no matter what. Cautiously, I walked towards the bedroom, though every instinct within me screamed to run. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and I could see the large mirror inside. My reflection stared back at me, but something was off. My face looked different, paler, emptier, as if I were a shadow of myself. And in the corner of the mirror, the woman stood again, this time closer than ever. I knew this was the final warning. I had to do something before it was too late. But what? How could I stop this horror? That night, I decided to return to the hidden room within the apartment. I was sure the key to all of this was there. With a candle and whatever courage I had left, I stepped into the darkness. As I entered, the atmosphere in the room felt more oppressive than before. The mirrors facing the walls seemed alive, as if something behind them was trying to get out. I took the woman's diary again and read it carefully. On the last page, I found a clue I had missed before. The woman had written about an ancient ritual she had attempted to rid herself of the evil entity haunting her. However, she failed, and the entity only grew stronger. I knew that the only way to stop it was to complete the ritual. But the risk was high if I failed. I might be trapped in this apartment forever, just like the woman. Carefully, I followed the instructions in the diary. Candles were lit in every corner of the room, and I began chanting the incantation written there. At first, nothing happened, but suddenly, the entire apartment shook violently, as if something was furious at being disturbed. The shadows in the mirror started to move wildly, and the woman appeared again, her face now twisted into something horrifying, almost unrecognizable. She tried to come closer, but I kept chanting the incantation louder and louder. And then, suddenly, everything stopped. The room went still, the mirrors cracked with a sharp sound, and the shadow disappeared, as if it had been sucked into the darkness. I collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath, but I knew I had succeeded. However, as I stood up, I realized something horrifying. My reflection in the mirror wasn't moving at all. Its eyes were empty, its face expressionless. I tried to step out of the room, but my feet felt glued to the floor. And then, I saw it, the reflection wasn't just mimicking me, it had replaced me. I ran out of the apartment, leaving everything behind. But as I reached the front door, I saw my own face in the window, my real face, trapped inside the mirror. I realized, even though I had stopped the terror, I myself was now trapped in the apartment, and there was no way out. Sometimes, in our pursuit of the truth, we end up opening doors to unimaginable horrors. The apartment now stands empty. No one dares to go near it. But if one night you happen to walk past its quiet hallways, you might hear whispers from behind the walls, or see a shadow in the mirror that shouldn't be there. Remember, some secrets are better left buried, because the truth can be a terrifying trap. And when you're caught in it, there's no escape.